So I like to think of it this way. Sustainability is transforming technology, and technology is transforming sustainability. What do I mean by that? Let's start with how sustainability is transforming technology. So this is really for me about the technology companies managing their sustainability and climate related risk. So this is a sector that today consumes between 1% and 2% of all global energy, and that is growing exponentially. So it's a sector that's going to be reliant for its future success on access to an abundant supply of affordable and reliable energy. So the tech sector realised quite early on that they were going to need to decouple business growth from carbon emissions growth. And what we've seen from that sector is some really ambitious and progressive commitments around renewable energy sourcing and procurement and sustainability strategies more broadly. If we look at renewable energy, for example, today, thanks to the tech sector, 50% of all renewable energy, wind and solar in North America, is sourced by the technology companies. And 3 technology companies, Amazon, Meta and Google, are the 3 largest corporate purchasers of renewable energy in North America. And of course you have many other players in the mix as well, VMware is in the list. So what you see here really is the tech sector helping to accelerate the transition to the clean energy economy in a way that benefits their business, but also benefits society at large. So that's really significant. We also see from this sector some of the most ambitious sustainability strategies and commitments in the business community. So, I think back to 2020 and there was a period where we saw a raft of very ambitious sustainability strategies being released by the tech sector. Very innovative, fresh ways of looking often at what is possible from a corporate when it comes to sustainability. So for example, we saw Microsoft committing to be carbon negative by 2030 and to eradicate all their historical emissions. We saw Google committing to source renewable energy on a 24/7 basis wherever they operate. Really significant because it changes the energy infrastructure all over the world. And you saw VMware committing to achieve the Paris Agreement goals and be net zero by 2030, which is 20 years ahead of schedule. So some real ambition there from this sector. And of course what that does is it sets them up for business transformation. They will have to transform the way they do business in order to meet these extremely ambitious goals. But it also raises the bar for the business community as a whole and really can help catalyse progress. Then when we think about how technology is transforming sustainability, and this is really for me where we look at how these companies are maximising their climate related opportunity. And so what we're seeing now is the tech companies bringing a lot of their best attributes, their innovation, their tolerance for risk, and their intelligence, both human and artificial, to the challenge of the transition to the low carbon and sustainable economy. And we're seeing some really interesting new technologies emerging that are helping all of their stakeholders, whether that's governments, cities, businesses, or indeed individuals, drive their own decarbonisation agendas. So we're seeing technologies that help you decarbonise your tech infrastructure, technologies that help you measure, monitor and manage your carbon emissions, technologies that help you monitor your home energy or building energy consumption, technologies that help scientists get a better feel for what's going on globally with climate and ecosystem health, as well as helping individuals on a day-to-day basis change their behaviours. And I think we're really just scratching the surface of what's possible here. I think with the advent of AI, some of those technologies are going to get exponentially more effective. So it's very exciting to think about how the tech sector can transform sustainability. In fact, you could go so far as to say we won't really achieve our sustainability goals without the technology sector. That said, there are some thornier issues where I'd like to see more progress. I think about things like the transition to the circular economy, where there is a lot of activity going on, but we still have a massive e-waste problem. And there are some social issues in supply chains and so forth that we really do need to get a much better grip on. But overall, this is a sector that has contributed a lot. And just speaking personally, I actually really enjoy working with the tech sector. Some businesses will be more interested in what's the least they can do to stay out of trouble. But always when you work with the tech sector, it's in line with their culture of leadership, innovation. And they're often asking what's the most sort of impactful, meaningful thing that we could do, which is a sustainability consultant is the question you want to hear. So I think we've got much more to come from this sector, and I would just say, watch this space. So for me, companies that are only focused on sustainability as an area to drive efficiencies and savings and to manage risk are missing the most exciting innovation opportunity of the 21st century and a huge opportunity to drive competitive advantage. And actually my book really set out to both prove that this could be done and explain how. So the Green Giants are 9 companies that have turned sustainability into billion-dollar businesses, which to my mind is kind of the definition of driving competitive advantage. You might think about Nike with the Flyknit shoe, and this was the first shoe that had ever been woven instead of pieced together, and it made athletes faster, as well as cutting waste. You might think about Tesla. I'll talk a bit more about how Tesla drove competitive advantage in a minute by bringing the first highly successful EV to market. Or you might think about IKEA with their line of products for a more sustainable life at home, products that enable consumers to live more sustainably in their own homes, which is a billion-dollar plus line of business for IKEA. And there are plenty of other examples too. Now, what these companies got right, to my mind, is they realised that sustainability is not just about where you spend, save or donate money. In the 21st century, it can be central to how you make it. It's not just about efficiencies and savings, it's about revenue and top line growth. It's not just about future potential, but it's about real money right here, right now. And the Green Giants have really proved this by each building these billion-dollar businesses from products or services with sustainability or social good at their core. And just to dwell on competitive advantage for a moment, let's just look at Tesla, which when I was writing the book was actually much, much smaller than it is today. But that's a company that started several years after General Motors had declared the electric vehicle dead. And Tesla didn't take no for an answer and really went on to become the most successful car company in generation, the most valuable car company in the world. And actually today, Tesla still commands about 50% of the US electric vehicle market, even though you see the incumbents now aggressively coming into that sector. But those incumbents were not taking sustainability seriously as a true driver of competitive advantage. And as a result, they've ceded a decade of leadership to Tesla, an upstart who came in and generated a huge amount of value for their customers, their shareholders, themselves, and have really helped accelerate that transition to the solar electric economy in the process. So, for me, that's just one example, but there are many more of how sustainability can become the spur to invent the products and services of the 21st century, not just greener, but better. So huge opportunity if you approach sustainability in the right way. I see so much momentum from the tech sector, really helping customers and consumers with achieving their own sustainability goals, whether that's through software that helps you measure, manage and mitigate your carbon emissions, or technology that's providing a huge level of transparency and visibility into what's really going on in the supply chain, technologies that help drive energy efficiency in buildings, help decarbonize your digital infrastructure. There are just so many examples of where there is huge growth being driven by the tech sector by meeting their customers' needs and helping their customers meet their sustainability goals. So a real win-win. I'm not aware of any technology companies that meet the criteria for Green Giants yet, which is the $1 billion from that product or service with sustainability or social good at its core. But if somebody watching happens to be aware of one, I would love to know. I'm always on the lookout for new Green Giants. I'm hungry for fresh thinking and fresh ideas. So please, if you know of a Green Giant, let me know. And I would just say, absolutely this is a driver of competitive advantage. And I would begin looking to exploit that opportunity before your competitor does. Science-based targets are absolutely critical to how we'll achieve reduction in global greenhouse gas emissions. They are how we will align the business sector with the goals of the Paris Agreement to halve emissions by 2030 and achieve net zero by 2050. And they've really become the credible gold standard for corporate target setting today. And I would go so far as to say if you are setting any other kind of goals right now, you're really out of date. We really need every business to be committing to science-based climate goals. And what's different about science-based goals from the sort of old way we used to set climate goals was, in the past, companies would sort of measure their carbon footprint and then, oh yes, we think we can reduce X%. Now it's a much more outside-in approach where you're saying, this is what the world collectively needs to accomplish, and this, based on a set of criteria, is the portion of that we as a business need to deliver. So it's a much more robust method, and it's what really is required if we're going to hold the world to 1.5 degrees of warming. I think today we're looking at about 1,500 global companies that have set science-based targets, and that number's really growing rapidly. So this is really a movement that's gaining steam. That said, there are still probably about 2/3 of large global companies, according to one study I saw recently, that have not yet set science-based targets. So, it's past time. We really all need to be joining hands on this and moving forward. And science-based targets aren't just good for the planet, they are also very good for business. Science-based targets are going to help you align your business with science, of course, but also future-proof your business against potential regulatory changes, set an innovation agenda that's going to set you on a path to really thrive in a low-carbon economy. They're going to signal to all your stakeholders that you are a serious modern company, and they're going to help you find those efficiencies and savings. And some companies save literally millions of dollars from the efficiencies they find through this process. So it's really good for business, not just good for the planet. That said, any target is only as good as your ability to achieve it. So we need to ensure that those ambitious targets are matched with ambitious action. The world as a whole needs to rapidly decarbonize. We need to accelerate this process much faster than we have been able to up to now. So I guess if you've been thinking about setting science-based targets, like VMware has done, thank you VMware, and you haven't done it yet, maybe this is your sign that now's the time. So when I was researching the Green Giants, these 9 companies who have built billion-dollar businesses from products, services, or lines of business with sustainability or social impact at their core, my challenge was to work out what were the common factors, these 6 common factors I identified that accounted for their uncommon success, so that others could follow the model that they had set. And one of those 6 factors was what I call the new behavioural contract. The Green Giants embrace a set of behaviours that allow them to behave their way to billions. And those behaviours include transparency, responsibility, and experimental collaboration. And in VMware's Zero Carbon Committed initiative, I see a great example of experimental collaboration in action. So this initiative is seeing VMware go beyond its role as an individual service provider to individual clients to really think about its role at the center of that network. How can it connect the dots to drive change at scale? And so what we see is, by aggregating the supply and demand, by raising greater awareness that the zero carbon cloud is an opportunity, by reducing the friction to making the shift for customers, by making it easier for them to find the right partners, and by, I'm sure, enabling the sharing of learning and best practice, VMware is really using collaboration to accelerate progress on the zero carbon cloud. And what really appeals to me about this is, in sustainability, we tend to talk about this idea that, quite a lot of the ideas we need already exist. We just need to implement them better and faster. And so that's true of zero carbon cloud, right? It's a solution that already exists, that has a ton of upsides with, as far as I can see, no real downsides for everyone who embraces it. And so what we need to do is really utilize that solution as fully and rapidly as possible. And so as we see this initiative grow, my hope is that VMware will be able to report that it has indeed helped accelerate the transition to the zero carbon cloud, that there will be business and climate benefits for customers who've been able to achieve their sustainability goals by becoming part of it, that it's really benefited the zero carbon cloud providers, and that VMware has really sort of been able to make a difference through this initiative that benefits business and the planet. So I think really the thing about sustainability is we can compete and we can collaborate. It's about really knowing when's the right time for competition and when's the right time for collaboration. There's an African proverb that the sustainability community is fond of, that when you want to go fast, go alone. When you want to go far, go together. So my hope is that this initiative allows VMware and all of its partners to do both. Sustainability and innovation is actually one of my favourite topics. I was so excited when I realised doing the research for the book that disruptive innovation is one of the 6 common factors of green giants. I think it's so easy to think that sustainability is somehow about primitive, it's about low tech, lo-fi, it's about those kitchen cleaners that don't really clean your kitchen, the scratchy brown toilet paper, the electric vehicles that drive like golf carts. And I'll be honest, the early incarnations of sustainable products didn't really do us any favours here. But what the green giants prove is actually that sustainability is the polar opposite of primitive. They take sustainability as the spur to invent the products and services of the 21st century, not just greener, but overall better. Many of the technologies that we're living with today may be ready for retirement. I think about Tesla with the EV again, but also Nike with the Flyknit shoe. So that's a really interesting story. The Flyknit came out of a collaboration between the innovation and sustainability teams in response to a prompt to develop more eco-friendly shoes to meet their sustainability goals, but also a request from their athletes to create a lighter weight shoe that would let them run faster. And that all came together with the incredible talent of their team, which is a common factor. It's one of the ways green giants deliver this kind of innovation is by putting their absolutely best talent and investing significant resources into the innovation. They came up with Flyknit, which instead of piecing a shoe together from different materials in factories all over the world, it weaves the upper from one continuous piece of recycled fibre. And that cuts cost, it cuts waste by up to 80%, and it makes the shoe lighter, so that for the athlete by the end of a marathon, it's like they didn't have to carry the weight of a car. So you can see that this is driving, both carbon performance and athletic performance. It's a really interesting example of how sustainability can unlock potential that people didn't even realise was there. And the Flyknit went on, of course, to become a billion, probably by now multi-billion-dollar platform for Nike. And I believe there are these kind of green giant innovations just waiting to be discovered in every category. People can look at the sustainability challenge. Maybe we sort of often focus on the scale of the problem, but what about the scale of the opportunity? The world needs to transition to a low carbon economy over the next 30 years. That is the biggest innovation opportunity, perhaps ever, but certainly in our lifetimes. And so it's really exciting to think about what innovations are going to come out of it. And let's look at the tech sector. As we've discussed already today, there are so many exciting innovations coming out of the technology sector that are going to help accelerate the transition to the low carbon world by helping individuals, businesses, governments better meet their need to live that low carbon lifestyle and meet their own sustainability goals and targets. I certainly look at the zero carbon cloud as an example of disruptive innovation. This strikes me as a technology that has that green giant potential. It's just better than what existed before. It's low carbon, but it's also just a better solution. Why wouldn't you embrace it? There don't seem to me to be any trade-offs. So it will make the technology that came before obsolete. And that's really the definition of a disruptive innovation. So in my view, this is a huge opportunity. I can't wait to see what the brilliant minds of the tech sector and other sectors invent in the years to come. We've got to do this, and we might as well make it fun, right? So sustainability and innovation to me go hand in hand. It's really significant that so many of the large tech firms have made really ambitious climate commitments, and VMware's commitment to net zero by 2030 is absolutely among the most ambitious. So let's talk about it in 2 parts. First of all, the net zero. Net zero is the direction of travel. That's where we all need to be as a global economy by 2050. And that's true whether we're a government, a nation, a business, or indeed an individual. So net zero is where we need to be. And the more companies that commit to achieve net zero, the more we start to get that real, what I like to think of as the norming of net zero. That's really going to become what people will commit to as the gold standard as part of their science-based targets, as we discussed earlier. So net zero matters. Then let's talk about 2030. So Paris calls for net zero by 2050. The Climate Pledge, which is an initiative spearheaded by Amazon to galvanise a number of players, is aiming to bring that forward to 2040. So here we have VMware committing to achieve net zero by 2030. That is extremely ambitious, and it certainly won't be an easy thing for them to achieve. So by committing to that, they really are signalling that they are very serious about addressing and mitigating their climate impacts, that this is something that is central to their business strategy, and that they really do want to lead on the transition to low carbon business. And setting a goal like this really sends signals up and down the value chain that low carbon business is the future. It really does raise the bar for those around you to meet your level of ambition if they can. And I think the other thing that's really important is that if VMware is successful in achieving these goals, they prove that it's possible, which is also super important. Proof of concept is really important when it comes to climate goals, because they're not easy to achieve, and we should not underestimate what we're asking of the business community by asking them to achieve these very challenging goals. Now, of course, sustainability goals are only as good as your ability to meet them. So this ambition, as I said, I think before, it needs to be coupled with really aggressive action. But what we need is leadership. We need deep emissions cuts. We need rapid deep emissions cuts, and we need consensus that net zero matters. And in this goal, I see all of those things. So I think it's really exciting, and I really look forward to seeing VMware succeed. Transparency and accountability are absolutely critical when it comes to sustainability reporting. The old adage that you can't manage what you don't measure is absolutely true when it comes to sustainability, and reporting in sustainability should adhere to just as high standards as reporting on anything else that a business does. And I think what's exciting about this conversation right now is that actually we're in the midst of a series of transitions that are really breathing new life into transparency when it comes to sustainability, that are really going to sort of transform the whole landscape. So the first is in who's asking for this information. Historically, there's this image that the non-profit communities were the thorn in the side of the CEO, pressing for more progress, and they were the only ones really reading these reports. But now, of course, it's the shareholder and investor community that is really pressing organizations for this information, because they want to make sure that you are measuring, managing and mitigating your ESG and sustainability risk appropriately, and that you're maximizing the innovation opportunities and the revenue opportunities, because they understand that ESG and sustainability are now business critical. And this is also driving an exciting sort of migration of the information that used to be just in the sustainability report onto the Bloomberg terminal and out into the world. So it's really exciting to see that data gaining more traction and actually being used in a much more efficient and effective way. The second major transition that's going to have huge ramifications for businesses across the globe is the shift from voluntary to mandatory reporting. And what we're seeing, of course, is the introduction of regulation in markets across the globe that mean that sustainability reporting is going to be mandated. Europe ahead of the curve on this, but other large jurisdictions, including the US, set to follow. So this will mean businesses really have to rethink how they're reporting. But the really good news is that it should drive standardization and consistency that's long overdue in the sustainability reporting world. And that should really allow the data to be much more useful and comparable. So that's an exciting development as well. Then we have to look at how sustainability reporting and data gathering is going from being a very analog process to a much more digitized one. And this is a big step forward, especially for the practitioners who are responsible for producing this data and producing these reports. Hopefully gone are the days where clients had to spend almost their whole year gathering the data and preparing the report. Now, because of the innovation coming from the tech sector, we have software that makes that process much more seamless, infinitely more efficient, and also means that data can be accessed and managed in real time, so it can actually become much more decision critical. So, huge benefit there. Although I would just sort of warn everyone that if what we had before we thought it was transparency, really it was just translucency, I would say. And now with the introduction of AI, we're going to go into high def. So AI is going to allow us to see so much more than we perhaps historically could. Businesses are going to be ready for a world, have to be ready for a world in which their customers and consumers can access this information at the touch of a button. So and there's really going to be nowhere to hide. So the accountability factor is going to become even more important. Hopefully this will lead to a new level of rigor and transparency. And those who get ahead of it can certainly view that as an opportunity, not as something that needs to be defended against and a threat. And then the final pivot is really sustainability reporting moving from siloed to integrated. And this is where we see progress towards the more integrated report, which is critical because we do need to much better understand how sustainability is impacting our business. Again, coming back to those risks and those opportunities. And integrated reporting allows us to get much more diligent in understanding that, measuring sustainability return on investment, understanding how the actions we're taking are improving and enhancing our business. So I think that shift to integrated reporting from a very siloed sustainability report that could have been disconnected from their core business is really important. So all in all, an exciting moment in the history of sustainability and transparency. But I think it's also important to point out that transparency is not an end in itself, right? That information is only as good as what you do with it. You could be the heaviest emitter in the world and get an A+ for transparency, but be doing really very little to mitigate your impacts and manage them. So we have to take that data and we must act on it. So it's transparency as a precursor to action. So welcome to the era of high-def sustainability, and I think exciting times ahead for this aspect of the conversation. Most of the businesses that I work with are not starting out from a point where sustainability is their core business. Unless you're what I call a born good or a green unicorn, where sustainability was part of your business from the get-go, and you might think about a business like Allbirds or Impossible Burgers for examples of those. Unless you are one of those companies, it's highly likely that sustainability isn't your core business and you don't currently have a business model around sustainability. But that doesn't mean that you can't join this movement. There is absolutely so much opportunity, and as I've said, I think already, I believe that there is a green giant billion-dollar opportunity, more than one in every category. And the question is, who's going to be the one to exploit that opportunity? And really, what I tried to do with Green Giants was sort of lay out the roadmap that you can follow to achieve the success that the Green Giants have found. So the 6 factors that businesses can embrace are outlined as follows. So the first is an iconoclastic leader. So you do need to ensure that your CEO is on board, or if you are the CEO, that you really want to go after this opportunity. And of course I believe every CEO should, but the CEO has to believe it, because each of these success stories was led by that C-suite individual who believed that the transformation was essential and a huge opportunity, and they had the courage, the conviction and the commitment to make it happen. The second is the disruptive innovation. So go after the innovation in your category. Make sure that you understand that the efficiencies and savings are critically important, but are not what will build your billion-dollar business. But you must be transforming your business, of course, at all levels to make this happen. But the innovation piece is really where you're going to find the biggest opportunity. The third shared factor of Green Giants is a purpose beyond profit. So these are companies that are not motivated by profit alone. They have a guiding purpose that thinks and envisions the business as a positive force for good in the world. It's really just a very tight articulation of your corporate strategy. But this gives everybody a shared understanding of why they're getting up to go to work every day. It really helps focus your efforts and your initiatives. And the Green Giants prove that, in fact, what I call the purpose paradox, businesses that pursue a purpose beyond profit are actually more profitable than those that pursue profit alone. So again, a huge opportunity, and that's something that any business, a process any business can go through. If you don't already have a purpose, you can certainly discover yours, uncover yours. The fourth is that sustainability is not siloed, it's built in, not bolted on to the structures that run the business. Everything from the corporate strategy, to the organizational structure, to the cost structure, to the incentive structure of the team, and beyond. Sustainability can only drive billions if it's embedded into the core business. You can't drive that kind of success from the margins. You'll only achieve a fraction of what's possible if you don't transform your business to embed sustainability at the heart of it. The fifth shared factor is mainstream appeal, and this is kind of about marketing. You need to make sure that the way you position your sustainability is relevant to your key target audiences, whether those are customers, consumers, scientists, whomever they might be, investors. Because historically, sustainability products were really just targeted to that super green niche, and you're never going to achieve the mainstream business success with a niche target audience. You need to ensure that you appeal to a much broader audience. So mainstream appeal, critically important. And finally, it's that new behavioral contract that I spoke about earlier. Embracing those new behaviors like transparency, responsibility, and collaboration. This new behavioral playbook is enabling the green giants to behave their way to billions, even though it might feel deeply counterintuitive to a more traditional business that hasn't necessarily explored those avenues before. So your core business might not be sustainability today, you might not have a business model around sustainability yet, but my bet is that if you invest the time and the resources to get there, that you can make it happen. And it's also my firm belief that the businesses that get this right now will be the business titans of tomorrow. So go find your green giant opportunity before your competitors do. If you're looking to make a meaningful commitment to sustainability initiatives, I would honestly just say, get started. There is now a pretty well-trodden path that you can follow to develop a sustainability strategy for your company. It starts by getting some information. What's already going on in your enterprise? I'm sure there are plenty of activities already in place that you can aggregate. You also need some baseline data about your impacts to understand where your greatest impacts lie. You need to do a materiality assessment to understand which topics are going to be the most important for your business to act on. Set an ambition level, make sure that it's understood what the level of ambition is. Not everybody has to be on the bleeding edge. If you're just getting started, you can right size the plan to meet your current capabilities. And then develop a strategy. That's going to set the agenda for the whole organization. They can understand what the direction of travel is, and you can then operationalize that with a plan that makes it happen. Don't try and go it alone. Today is actually a great time to be starting, because there is now so much knowledge and so many resources that exist that some of the early pioneers just simply didn't have access to. So you're not going to be inventing the wheel. There's plenty out there that you can tap into. I would say hire experts, both for your team and outside help. Attend the conferences. Read all the incredible new sustainability vertical media outlets that are available to you. Tap into all of that expertise that already exists. People will be excited to have you joining. It can be, I think, a time of anxiety to think about the risk of doing something. My advice to you would be the risk of doing nothing is much greater, especially at this point in history. As long as you approach this challenge with humility and an open mind, people are going to welcome you with open arms. The time is now. What are you waiting for? It's a really exciting journey to go on, and I wish you absolutely all the best with your journey to help make the low carbon sustainable economy a reality and make your business potentially a new green giant that thrives in this new future.